Greetings, everyone, and please, audience, we're happy to have you all with us here at GatherVerse AI Summit 2025, Day 2. We're certainly happy to have all of our roundtable experts that are coming to join us from around the world. Roundtable, please mute your mics until called upon. We will call on you individually to be able to express why you're here and who are you. And we want you to be able to give these remarks briefly. We have so much to cover. We have so much to unpack. There's so much to route into, and we have a full stack. We're so happy to be able to be afforded to come to this discussion at the topic in the roundtable discussion of AI Alert, Humanities Call to Action. There's never been more of an important time to be able to hold such a dialogue at the intersection of humanity and AI, audience, with great consideration of where we are and where we might be headed. With that said, Camila, we're happy to turn over to you. Please let us know who you are and what you're doing here, please.
Yes, so my name is Camille Sanders, founder and CEO of Greater Than Equal, and I am a global strategist and ecosystem builder working at the intersections of sustainability, technology, and equity. Hey, Stefan. But I'm happy to be here. I, talk mostly about artificial intelligence and the intersection with humanity. So great to be here. Thank you.
We're so happy to be able to have you, Camilla. Ellie, please.
Alrighty. Hi, everybody. It's your friendly neighborhood cyborg anthropologist. I research all the intersections between humanity and the ways we will define it in the future. Presently, I do technology literacy and education work in my local community, hopefully to empower more people to give true consent and have full knowledge of the technological future we are heading into.
Very happy to have you, our global cyborg anthropologist. And I hope I pronounced your name right, Alina.
Yes, hi, it's Alina. I'm a corporate attorney working with startups who are willing to create AI technology for their company based here in Silicon Valley. So I meet startup founders every day and help them with emerging technology and how we can protect their company, the users in the future.
Excellent. I'm very happy to have you. And Samaya, we'll bring you in next, please.
Sure. Thank you, Christopher. I'm happy to be here. I am a global product, technology, and strategy professional. Currently, I'm serving as a CPO for a category-defining startup in Web 3.0 and AI space. I also advise startups globally, and I'm also involved in AI research, AI machine learning and LLM research in the bioengineering and bioinformatics domain. I'm really happy to be here, and I really look forward to engaging with our audience and fellow speakers here on AI and how it is intersecting with the humanity.
Thank you so much, Samaya. We're happy to have you. Cinnamon, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cinnamon White. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Christopher, for inviting me. As my LinkedIn post says, I'm a visionary EdTech CEO with 20 years of experience, passionate about using technology to personalize learning and transform education. I'm here to discuss how rapid advancement of AI and its potential impact on the humanities.
Thank you so much, Cinnamon. Stefan, welcome back.
All right, it's good to be here. Hey, everybody, I'm Stefan Youngblood, Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina, and I run Black Metaverse as well as a Black AI think tank, and we launched the National Black AI Literacy events, which we do quarterly, and just excited to be about the whole onboarding process and jumpstarting people into the world of AI. And also, I do a lot of stuff at the end where we're talking about ethics, dystopia, utopia, and all that may be coming. So it's great to be here.
We're super happy to have you. And Victor, please.
Hey, hi everyone. Glad to be here. My name is Victor Gubi. I'm the founder of Dawn. And basically, we just make sure we make education inclusive to those with special needs like dyslexia and the likes. I'm glad to be here and to share knowledge with amazing speakers who are here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victor. And Kellogg.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Kellogg Charles. I am a cybersecurity as well as an AI educator and practitioner. And one of my main area of education, research, and industry experience is around the principal uses of artificial intelligence and the governance component. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Charles. We're certainly happy to have you here, sir. And Zagros, with an unmuted mic, please tell us who you are and why you've showed up to this roundtable discussion, please.
Hi, so I'm Zagros Matsujati. I have a doctorate in political economy and public policy, and I helped found I Can Prove It, which is an AI-based educational system. And I'm also a professor of economics, and I teach AI and business ethics at Winston-Salem State University.
Thank you so much, everyone. We're happy to have all of you joining us with us today. Roundtable, we're going to be calling on you. This is a bit rapid fire. We're going to be touch and go. We're going to be moving fast. We have quite a bit to unpack. We ask that your remarks be precise and feel free to be as candid as you feel like you need to be, with diplomacy, of course. We've had 2 days filled with extraordinary comments and remarks, and we haven't even come close to being able to scratch the surface of exhausting this subject matter when it comes to artificial general intelligence, when it comes to superintelligence, or even simple AI. But yet, here we are. Elena, we're routing into you. We talk about AI systems if they were given full autonomy and critical decision-making tomorrow. What would be the first crisis, if any at all, would need to be prevented?
So I would say I'm a supporter of the development of AI as fast as possible with the minimum human involvement. And probably that would be something substantially different from everyone else's opinion here. But I think we need to make sure that any decision that the AI makes has a human in the loop, and it's protected by a decision of a human who oversees what's happening. And we make sure that this decision is ethically correct, is not biased, and non-discriminatory against anyone.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Elena. I really appreciate that sentiment. We're coming to you when we talk about the first crisis that we would prevent when it comes to AI. If it were fully autonomy, with the full autonomous, and what that means, audience, when we talk about this, it's just as we're given full autonomy in critical decision-making, to be able to be fully agentic, to be able to run with wings, if you will, to fly, and be able to make some of the things that they're already knocking on the door, if you will, of capability. Not quite yet, not close to that, but it's actually giving us glimmers of it. Sentiment, what are your quick thoughts on this?
Well, as a educator, a mother, and a CEO, I'm never going to shy away from having the human oversight must always be a part of it. If there's any first crisis we need to prevent, it will always be to ensure that there's human oversight.
Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing it, Stefan. We're going to route over to you. I want to talk about ethical boundaries in AI development. What ethical boundaries in AI development should never be crossed, no matter the technological potential?
We probably already crossed them. So I think it's some of the areas around a sort of digital empathy, a digital compassion, and it's a synthetic version of everything that we are by humans. That AI, we've sort of put those, we've used human vocabulary to assign it to robots and AI. It's that part of neology is what it is. It's sort of writing a new word for it. Hey, now super intelligent is all this, or changing the meaning of what consciousness is. So when you undermine the actual meaning of words, everything changes. And that's part of the issue that's happening. That's the boundary that we've crossed right now, is the redefining of words so that almost anything is anything. I'll stop there.
Ellie, how do you feel about what it is that Stefan and other remarks have been expressed so far when it comes to this, and with great consideration of what ethical boundary in AI development should never be crossed?
Yeah, I mean, when we have to first define the boundaries, and we haven't yet, which is also how they get crossed. My personal opinion is that I think non-consent should be a boundary that's not crossed. For example, when we're aggregating data or training these models, are we gaining consent from the places in which we are gathering this data from? And I feel like that's a boundary that's already been crossed. I feel like it's being crossed in a way without considering the long-term human partnership. For example, if you ask someone for a fruit from their tree, they might give you 2. But if you take a fruit from their tree, they might hide all the fruits. If we establish a relationship of consent, then we'll be able to actually work with data in a more ethical way. And this goes into autonomous models. If we allow models to run without human constraints, are we building in ways for the model to run autonomously and run on an ethical model that we've previously established.
Indeed, that's really fascinating. When I come back into the hills and thinking about something that Stefan had briefly mentioned, that we've already crossed these lines in many ways. This could be true, and this could be analogous to what we're seeing happen in the world in respects to DeepSeek, if you will, and so many other different models that are building at a hyperscale. I personally am maybe similar to Elena. I'm here in Silicon Valley. I am an accelerationist. I do believe in flying as fast and hard as you can, but at the same time, with ethical governance structures, they're needed. Dr. Charles, let me ask you, and let's kind of bring this attention. Let's say these lines have been crossed and there are more to be crossed. What's the danger, potential danger in this?
I mean, the potential danger is having unfeathered access and not knowing how to deal with it. For example, a lot of the things that are happening now with AI and the advancements, and definitely with the new administration that's coming in, which definitely shows that the acceleration is probably going to double or triple. There are a lot of components as it relates to governance, as it relates to laws, that we are not in tune with. And with the EU Act that's right around the corner, with a lot of the trust AIs and the AI incident database, where things are happening every day, we're unable to kind of keep track with many of these components.
Indeed. Thank you for sharing that, Charles. Camilla, I'm going to you and Zagros. You're coming in next, Victor, and then we'll route to you after that. Samaya, we have a lot to unpack with you as well. Camilla, of the same, when we talk about this hyperscale, this building at an accelerated fashion, these models that are being deployed out into the world, we've never really seen technology going this fast. We asked this back in 2023 at our first AI GatherVerse Summit, if you will, but I think the question begs and bears worth repeating. Are we moving too fast, or are we not moving fast enough?
I would almost say both. I think we are moving very fast, and I'm also, I think that's fine. It's the rate that it's going to move, right? But I think that there are certain pockets of the movement that aren't moving fast enough. So we have these non-inclusive groups that are moving very fast, but then we have marginalized populations, and some people aren't even aware of what's happening when it comes to artificial intelligence, aren't even aware of how to use it for their benefit, right? And so that we're not moving fast enough in some areas. And I think that conversations like this in education, that's how you kind of bridge that gap.
It's incredible to think about this for a second when we think about the opportunity to have some of the greatest accessible information available to us in such a way deployed and delivered. But at the same time, it's similar to what's been covered already here, audience. Would love to hear your sentiments on this as well. But piggybacking on Camilla, shoulders, if you will, Zagros, if you will, we talk about, listen, it's moving so fast that a lot of people in communities can't keep up. I would submit to you that there are still many of those in the world that never even use ChatGPT 3.5 legacy. It seems like models that are still capable, quite capable, and so many people are interacting and using these models every day new for the first time and has not reached global mass consumption when we think about the deployment transmetropolitan, transcontinental, and that when people are in need of education, we're reliant still on old school methodologies to be able to deploy and teach, when the reality is maybe these models will be more professionally adapt to be able to be the teachers and the educators to fill in the gaps where we as humans may have slow processes in place. And so it seems to me that we need new systems in place, Zagros. But what are your thoughts on this? Are we moving too fast or not fast enough, sir?
I think, again, it's a little of both. I mean, part of the problem is that we're moving quite fast in those places that already have access without understanding the ethical ramifications of it. So I believe in using the Montreal protocols on responsible AI to be looking at those. But on the other hand, there's a lot of communities that, you're talking about not having access to ChatGPT 3.5. There's people who haven't ever used a computer before in various places. We need to dramatically expand access, and we have to make it so that people, when they're using it, they understand the tools, that these are just tools, and that humans need to be in control of things. And you can't just simply accept whatever answer you're getting due to all of the hallucinations that we sometimes see. And so we need to kind of go forward, but also scale back a little bit, make sure that we are implementing things with an understanding that everything has to be done for the best purposes of all of humanity. And that means being much more inclusive and much more accessible to everyone as well.
Zagros, well said. And permit me to do a follow-up with you. Let's assume none of us know what responsible AI is, because I hear AI safety, AI verification, I hear AI ethical governance structures. Let's assume that we don't know what AI responsibility is. What is AI responsibility?
Well, I like to look at the Montreal Declaration on Responsible AI. It talks about 10 different principles and things like in aspects of autonomy, and we have to look at inclusivity. There's a series of things that we have to build into it, because the problem is that whatever we think of it, AI doesn't think. AI needs to be given guide rails that we can uh, make it so that, in fact, it will serve all of humanity. And one of the biggest things we also need to make sure is that humans always have that responsibility and accountability. Because if you allow AI to go off on its own, the other problem is hacking it and having it do bad things. We've already seen it being able to be done in the test labs. We need to make sure that that in any case we can take control. I do not want AI making life and death decisions that that choose one group of people over another. And unfortunately, I've seen too many computer scientists trying to use ethical realms of utilitarianism as opposed to thinking about this holistically and allowing humans to continue to be in control of this.
Sure. Thank you for that, Zagros. We will come back to you shortly. Audience, when I think about this situation that we're finding ourselves in, and with the answers being whether we're moving fast enough or maybe too slow, in a both and, if you will, two things can be true at the same time, which I certainly think that is the case for here. So Maya, we're coming into you because here at the same time, we're thinking about the hyperscale and the accelerated fashion, a distribution of AI models, or these family of models, if you will. Is there a tipping point where AI advances faster the human governance can control? If so, are we already there from your lens perspective, Samaya?
I believe, and I will build on what Zargos has said. I think that we are partially there with the AI agents or agentic AI. So agentic AI has automated a lot of things in the SaaS industry or in the technical or business industry. But if it will go beyond this point, and when we talk about AGI or artificial super intelligence, and we are like, there are companies in the world, in the US, who are already working on it. I think that we are almost at a tipping point where we are surpassing the like AI, where AI governance cannot keep up with the AI innovation. And I think that is a very scary point for all of us while living in this society, because AI is as good as the data which it is trained on. And if there is no human intervention and constant human monitoring, AI is not good enough to make autonomous decisions.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Victor. I want to route into you real quick. And then Stefan, we're jumping over, and then everyone else prepare to get ready. We have a lot more to be able to unpack here. When we think about this, Victor, when we think about this hyperscale and this movability, what is it that you're seeing from your lens perspective in the work that you're doing? Victor, I think we lost you. That's fine. We'll come back to you in just a moment. And let's go over to Stefan. Stefan, let's go back to your original sentiments. We've already crossed that line. Obviously, we haven't done it in total, but we have crossed that line. We are moving very fast. And then, Lynn, I want to get your perspective on this. What are your thoughts and extended thoughts on this, sir?
Yeah, so my very strong viewpoint is that AI is not going to say to us one day, hey, you know, we got there. We're at AGI, or surprise, we're at ASI. I think that it's at that place that no one can really stop it, because it's a race that's going on right now. And how you can get another country to slow down or stop, it's going to take a lot. But I think the way that we've created new models that are being used in this sort of agentic age, and the idea that they're reasoning in a way that is trying to mimic the human brain, we're quickly moving to this sort of lead ball that no one can break, and it's got bigger and bigger, and it's just going to be smarter than us. And there's no reason to believe that when we've created this AI that's smarter, that it's not going to just usurp those decision-making skills and have some control that we've given it because of the training over what we do.
Indeed, that's very interesting, Stefan. Alina, I kind of want to go for the hardball slugger out of the park question right now. Let's just get to it. Let's just take it there, audience. Given the nature of this discussion that we're having in the subject line, let's just take it for a second. We're running as fast as we ever could. We're seeing deployment come out as fast as we ever seen it. Is our role going to be that these models, once they become recursive in development and being able to upscale, hyperscale their own selves, absent from human presence, if you will, that's from the data scientist, no longer having to put together the data set, that's from the data engineer, having to be able to process and work and go through reinforcement learning and thinking about fine tuning and all the different things that come with that. Is our role going to be, or prospectively, can we see us having more of a governance structure and helping aid, if you will, these AI models to be able to grow and scale? And might we let them take off and be able to run and do things that we cannot?
I would say the answer is no. AI will never be able to replace us in things that we cannot do unless it's something that a human cannot do at all, like physically or mentally. But I would say that the person or any professional who uses AI for work or for self-development is doing a huge favor for themselves. But I think the 21st century will be about how human can interact with AI and use it for the benefit of the society. So I'm a pro supporter of AI. I use it on a daily basis. I use different AIs that helps me to smooth my balance at work, help my clients, maybe expedite the process of work that can be done by the machine rather than the person. So I believe we need to establish a framework where humans interact with AI in the way that AI benefits humanity. And there's always human in the loop who oversees the process, but it's all combined together, works for the benefit of humanity rather than one replacing another.
Ellie, Dr. Charles, and Maya Cinnamon, I have a real concern. Ellie, we'll kick off with you based on what Elena just said, and kind of circling back to what Zagros just mentioned when it comes to what they're building, when it comes to Montreal or protocol, if you will, and thinking about ethical governance structures or frameworks. Here's my concern. Frameworks themselves. Is the hyperscale of AI moving too fast to be able to incorporate an indoctrinated framework? I just was listening to the commentary audience with an AI leader, if you will, in this world. Had made expression that there is no safety parameters. There are no safety guards because it's moving too fast. How do we as humans catch up when it comes to framework, ethical governance framework and structures? How do we catch up to this rapid speed? We do see here in the West that there's been a significant reduction in whatever AI safety programs or protocols that were put in place and regulatory considerations, which it is what it is. We are hyperscaling. We are moving fast. Ellie, what are some of your concerns with that? Do we share the same concern? No wrong or right answer. Go ahead.
That's a great question. I entirely agree that we don't have enough guardrails or safety rails. It's been the case for quite some time with tech overall. Famously, when I was in my master's program, I brought up to fellow students how the reason why we have a lot of the guardrails we have for the internet is because of laws that were passed before the internet was even taken seriously. Now we're at a place where AI has advanced so far that now we're taking it seriously, but there was no step ahead to put in those guardrails in place to guide the development. It's almost like growing a pot within a plant of you need to guide the way that this plant is going to grow and the rate that it grows at. We didn't set those frameworks ahead of time. In terms of how do we slow it down, it's either we really get serious and directly address it in terms of governments or in terms of local organizations, or everyday folks are going to fight against it. For example, artists are now putting watermarks over their artwork to make it anti-AI in order to make it harder for AI models to consume and then train upon their work. So either we directly address it in terms of governance or organizations, or the individual will take that action for themselves.
It's very fascinating. We will come back to that in just a moment. But Dr. Charles, I kind of want to address the question that's on the screen now. I don't want that to get unnoticed and unobserved. If AI-driven misinformation audience becomes indistinguishable from truth, how does society retrain trust and knowledge? With the caveat that we talk about misinformation, disinformation, and the threat of the ecosystem of information. That was a threat long before AI showed up, but AI certainly does propagate and accelerate misinformation itself. What are your thoughts on this, Dr. Charles?
Yeah, I think we can't let that happen because if that happens, then basically we've lost the battle, so to speak. So, we need to look at various kind of mechanisms. We need to bring some cybersecurity mechanisms together, such as hashing and crypto to be able to identify real work as compared to disinformation work. Also, when we talk about responsible AI, one of the components of responsible AI is transparency. And one of the key things that are being spoken about is that content that is being created that is AI generated needs to be labeled AI generated. And also education, as consumers, as the end users, we need to be able to understand, how do we analyze information? How do we check if information is real? This is something that we're not doing right now at this particular level, but that has to be part of our overall ecosystem to make sure that we understand through our own research, as well as other boards and organizations that can do that research for us and let us know that what is real, what is not real. But if it gets to the point where we can't make a distinguish between mis and disinformation, then basically we've lost. As stated, especially for underrepresented areas, third world countries that don't have the tools, that don't have the capabilities to be able, those leaders could definitely take full advantage of those particular areas and just kind of control the whole narrative.
I find it interesting with the consideration of AI labeling. We have heard this expression before, and I think it remains to be true. But with the consideration, one of the things that we're looking at again is the influence of companies and corporations. None of us are certainly going to be able to force them to do it. We know that they've removed several different people in policy, which policy connects to people, and people connect to policy, and policy collects to legislators. We're certainly not going to be able to force pressure public sector to be able to do this, maybe in some different governments. So I still think about the autonomy of the individual consumer, either the agency for us to be able to build and deploy our own models and to be able to compete globally in the world, if you can, because the cost of compute is a staggering sentiment when we look at what it takes to even build out these models, let alone to maintain the integrity of the current disposition of the models themselves. So when we think about this building in, and Samaya will come to you, and then Russell will hard over to you in a moment. Victor, we're still waiting to be able to work with you. Our tech team is addressing this. Cinnamon, when we look at this, with the capability to be able to say, hey, as a consumer, should I use and exercise my limited power and not support these platforms that don't want to have AI labeling, not support these platforms that don't want to take advantage of what Elena talked about with frameworks and governance structures and safety, what Zagros is talking about? Should we as consumers start to think about building our own with the access that we have available to compete? Your mic, ma'am.
Yes, absolutely yes. The answer to that is yes. We should definitely start to make our own. When you're talking about building an LLM for AI agent, I believe as an educator that you should learn exactly what you're working on, how it operates, if it breaks, how to fix it, all that wonderful stuff. The comments throughout the panel today show it clearly that we are doing our human oversight. We are trying to create ethical frameworks. We're dealing with AI limitations, and we are already making efforts to make the public aware. All these things are happening right now and as we speak, and we should be a part of it to make sure that the DEI of it all is making it the greatest it could be. Some of the things we need to do are prioritize AI research, definitely AI safety research, continue to develop those ethical guidelines and regulations. Biggest thing is just increased collaboration. You have to have those researchers in the room, those policymakers, those ethicists, all of them have to be together. I know that they speak of when you're making a sale in the corporate world that you have your stakeholders at the table. These are the current stakeholders when we're talking about AI and how new it is and how unknown it is. Continue to educate the public.
Sure. And Camila, can we educate the public in being able to become entrepreneurs and innovators, if you will, to be able to deploy and build out their own models, to be able to distribute to all of us? As I've given the analogy time and again for so long, and it remains to be true, that when I think about ChatGPT, when I think about Anthropic, when I think about DeepSeek, when I think about all these other different makers of these models and Meta, the open source, all the different ones that we see at Mistral in Europe, when I see that, it seems to me that These people are making pots and pans and delivering it to us, the chefs of the world, to see what dishes that you and I will make, because the use cases have not been limited out internally, and they certainly do not have enough people internally to be able to understand the full capability and the capacity of these models. Camila, is this something that we could see in the foreseeable future of this type of democratized access?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is happening now, right? I think a lot of people that are marginalized and not included in the conversation and are not building with these larger companies, they are seeing that they cannot use these models for what they're doing. So I moderated a panel at the World Economic Forum talking about actual examples of social innovators, social impact organizations that are building their own models for their own communities. So they're saying we cannot use ChatGPT. We can't use these other things that were created by other groups that are not inclusive and don't represent the community. And you see other startups that are saying, hey, there's something missing. So I think that is being built even now.
Sure. That's interesting. And then we'll come over to you, Samaya, because my question to you is, how do we build it? As someone that's in the engineering side and working with engineers on these things. But before we get there, the reason, audience, why I feel this is so important when we talk about inclusive communities of culture, think about this. Next month, we have our GatherVerse Women's Health Summit. Here's what I do know. I know when it comes to women's health, I don't see the benefit of AI with its integration into the medical theater that 100% is built by the majority of men when it comes to AI tools for women in the medical theater. That doesn't add up. That doesn't register to me. We need more inclusive cultures to be able to help build out with extraordinary amount of agency. Samaya, how do we build this?
On that, I would like to make 2 points. Like first, when we talk about building our own LLMs and even SLMs, I think we need to review the cost of building those, including the hardware as well as the software cost. With the rise of DeepSeek, we have seen probably the cost of hardware is not as much as we initially thought. So we have to review those information or whatever we know at this point in time. But definitely building our own LLMs at a community level and specifically at an individual level, I don't see it technically feasible at this point in time, given the hardware and software cost, also given the type or level of expertise required. So that's one thing. We can definitely decide whether to use it as a community or not. But at this point in time, we cannot build our own LLMs and even SLMs. SLM stands for small language models. When the second point comes where involving the community is concerned, I am definitely pro community involvement. But how to get that done? I think DeepSeek has shown us the way, and the way is to make open source models where anyone from the community can come and they can look at the source code, they can see how that works, they can learn from it, they can reverse engineer it, and they can make their input in this open source code as well. And when Christopher, you made a point about, these big tech companies making these LLMs and letting us use those. I think open source will solve that problem because there are quite a few women out there or even other marginalized groups who are extremely expert in this. And I'll give 2 examples here. Meera Murati of OpenAI, who is the mastermind behind ChatGPT, and then Lu Feng of DeepSeek, who's the mastermind behind DeepSeek itself. So both are women. So the whole point is that if the model will be open source, then all these marginalized groups, including women, would be able to contribute and would be able to come up with the diverse input data sets, which will result in diverse outcomes, whether those are LLMs and SLMs. But definitely building LLMs or training LLMs or SLMs at individual level is not technologically feasible at this point in time.
I have so much I want to say to that, but I won't, because I want Dr. Charles to be able to round on top of that. And then Zagros, I want to be able to address this question on stage. Everyone else get ready, because we're getting ready to move even faster here. Dr. Charles?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an excellent idea to be able to run your own models. But the key component is the security components associated with that. For example, as stated, with DeepSeek being available right now, and it's being totally open source, and the cost to operate compared to OpenAI is a lot better. But there's some residual issues as it relates to security. As Stefan and I was talking about in chat, You could run it locally as a LLM or SLM, but as you run red teaming activities against the model, you realize that it's susceptible to prompt injections, it's susceptible to bias issues and a lot of different things. So you'll go through the whole process of creating a very nice model for your customers, but a hacker or a malicious person could come in and kind of flip that upside down. So, those are some of the things that you need to look at as an overall component to make sure that you have the right guardrails in place that won't turn things upside down for you.
This is a perfect segue for you, Zagros, to address the question that's on stage. Audience, this is a perfect segue based on what Dr. Charles just expressed about the emergency or the threat they're in when it comes to security. Let's look at that for a second. DeepSeek rocked the world. Some of it was a little bit on misinformation. Some of the things that they claimed to be true weren't completely true when it came to the last mile and lower efficiency of calls and all that. Okay, fine. But they're still building on top of the giant protocols and the different types of data that's already been open sourced out. Without open source, you don't have a DeepSeek in the first place for them to be able to build and innovate. Also, they don't have, and they're not held to the same standards of what a lot of other countries here in the West are held when it comes to how we develop it at hyperscale, even the ethical considerations. But Zagros, let's look at this for a second. Let's really look at this for a second. DeepSeek did come out. Its inference, its compute, the way that it reasons, it's fascinating to me and many other people. And needless to say, there's a competitor already on the hills with deep research, but we're not going to take it there. But Zagros, should there be an international AI emergency response protocol? If so, what would trigger it? And can there even be one globally as a global cloud consensus of emphasis when it comes to emergency? The reason that we have this question in here, folks, ladies and gentlemen, everyone that's with us now at GatherVerse.live, we're happy to see all of you that are with us and then a few that are at YouTube and LinkedIn. The reason we ask this question is because the prospective reality of us going from AGI to super intelligence is not a fictitious narrative. This could happen. The world is barely even ready for this transitional subsequent narrow AI to AGI. Zagros, should there be an emergency response protocol if this happens?
Well, there's a difference between should and can. I think the problem is you've got to get all the governments of the world on the same page, and each of these governments wants to be able to dominate, and that's going to become a problem. You've got to be able to say to people, look, there are security concerns that we have to address. We already know with DeepSeek that they tested it, and there were 50 different security protocols, and every single one of them they failed. And we have to also consider not only about the hacking and malicious actors, but also the AI itself oftentimes is a black box for many people. And we don't know what actually it's doing. It says one thing, but it may be doing another. Classic example of this, they were looking to try to cure cancer and various things. They looked at cancer cells on the body, and they said, okay, we have it tested. It looks great. We got 98% of the time it works. The problem was that the way they determined was it saw a ruler on the photograph, and that's how it decided it was cancer. Because every time there was cancer, they had a ruler to measure how big it was. So there's a lot of pollution that goes into the data that we have. People are polluting it, and as AI generates misinformation, it generates that, and there's a feedback loop. And so we have to be very careful about what we're training it on, how we're training it. We need to be looking at this in the lab, making sure that things can't escape, making sure that we have good, much better protocols with respect to security, and so we don't have hacking. And this especially is true with our private data, because our private data is actually what is the most important to be able to use AI with, but we want to have it contained within our own organizations. Because once it gets out, once the genie gets out, it's game over. And so we have to go and do something where we do not allow government backdoors. Even the United States, the discussions, the United States wants to build a backdoor into all of these encrypted technologies. We shouldn't do it. We need to have security, because once that data gets out, I don't care who it is, somebody can get it, and so you almost need to have AI running on an air-gapped system with any kind of private information that you have, so it can't be readily accessible.
Right. Right. No, what you're bringing is up is very important. And Russell, we're getting really hard over you for a moment, but I want to put more of a, I want to bring this into and let's from this abstract state to more of a concrete step of what's already been expressed by all of you here at the roundtable discussion. And then after Russell, Ellie, we want you to be able to round in with us, and then same thing with Elena, and then we'll come over to you, Cinnamon. Let's look at this perspective for a second, because we did talk about the autonomy of agency of developing and building. Camila brought this up and bringing some of these things up to say that these are things that we need to do. But Samaya brings up a great point and saying, hey, it's going to cost a lot of capital to be able to, in deal flow, to be able to have the leverage to be able to build and to be able to deploy out. And the reason we bring up Elena is because you're saying, hey, we need to move fast. We need to move faster. We're wholeheartedly supportive of this. That's part of the ethos of Silicon Valley, by the way. We hyperscale and we move very quickly with good reason and great reason, but not absent consideration of needing to be responsible. There are people in Silicon Valley, such as myself and Alita, that realize we need to be responsible and ethically safe. But let's talk about this for a second, and then we'll hop on what everyone else is saying here, and coming on the heels of what Dr. Charles has expressed, and Zagor's talking about the emergency, if you will, the lack of safety therein. Russell, bringing it to you, I know that you're working on universal verification. Briefly, please tell us, why is there a need for us to be able to equip every single human that will come in contact with these models now when it comes to universal verification, sir?
Yeah, in all honesty, I think it's crucial. It's going to be one of the most important things we mostly do. I think there's a massive gap between AI safety, AI regulation, every single area within AI. I think verification will allow people to be able to verify, trust, right? Be able to build trust, with the AI systems, be able to build trust with, what the data and the privacy side of things, and being able to verify that in a, in like the most authentic way possible, right? So verification, when it comes to the universal verification framework, the most important thing to the universal verification is, what are those standards within the verification, right? And how can that be universally applicable to all industries, right? And how can that be done in a best way possible? So when it comes to, for example, safety, ethics, etc., these are all subgenres which would fit into the universal verification framework. So when it comes to the verification standpoint and having that universally across the board and being able to protect both individuals and organizations that incorporate that within, whether it's for personal use or whether that's, from an operational standpoint, the verification side is going to be so important, because how do you know that this AI model that I'm using is safe? How do I know if this AI model is ethical? How do I know if this AI is not biased? So these are all important things that need to be checked. And in order for that to be checked, there needs to be a verification way in which to do that. And the universal verification framework will be able to do that. So verification is extremely important as we move into the future, and also when AI is checking AI as well.
Sure. And I'm looking forward to us to audience. There's a major summit happening here. Not a shameless plug. It's something that needs to be said. There's a major summit that's happening in London, which some of us here after on stage are going to be in attendance there, if you will, and hopefully even others, if you will, the Stefans and everyone else in the world that are dropping extraordinary wood, if you will. And when we talk about these things and the need to be able to have a universal cloud consensus of ethical governance structures, because, hey, listen, the reality is there's so many different ethical AI frameworks already in existence that serve the benefit of a rock in the garden. They don't grow. One, because we're subjected to an algorithm when we put it out to our audiences. No one even knows it's there. Two, there's not necessarily a global centralized place where we can even find these frameworks to implement. And three, we need to have a way to be able to create a mechanistic transparency involvement so that we can actually take advantage of these things. Ellie, Alina, let's talk about this for a second. As AI shifts power dynamics globally, who stands to gain the most and who's at the greatest risk, and why? Ellie, please.
Yeah. The folks who are at the greatest risk, I feel like first and foremost, are those who lack techno literacy. So as what was said earlier on the panel, there are folks who don't even have access to internet regularly, let alone have ever touched an AI model. So we have folks that have not interacted with technology to the extent of what is expected in the everyday technological world today, on top of folks who don't have access to the education or the support of continued education in order to keep up with the rate of technology. So I feel like those are the first folks that are going to be affected as the power shifts globally within AI. Secondly, are the folks who generate the material in which AI was built upon. So think of how we know what good film and CGI looks like because there were humans that created those things first. Those folks might have to shift industries or might be out of work due to the fact of AI stepping into those spaces. So we have to really take into account those folks who built the beautiful works that AI is learning how to build themselves. How can we incorporate those individuals instead of looking at it from a replace model? So those are the folks that I feel like would be most effective: lack of education, and those who created the works in which AI is aiming to mimic.
Thank you for bringing that up. We always want to take really consideration to the preservation of artistic community. Elena, Stefan, Cinnamon, I asked a question: what is the single most urgent AI-related policy that must be implemented within the next year? Can you produce something for all the companies that are listening now and prospectively even local governments? What would you say to them?
So I would say that EU AI Act that was developed in the European Union and Digital Services Act that was developed in the UK are good examples of how the US can start working on the AI related policy. I know that there are so many things that are not covered by these two acts, and they're mostly controlling big companies, not small companies, startups that develop the same AI technology. But I know that this is a good milestone, similar to the GDPR and CCPA policy, to develop something for the US similar to this. And as Zagros and Stefan mentioned before, I don't think that countries, including United States and China in particular, would be able to develop something unique policy, universal policy for everyone, because similar to the Cold War between Russia and the US in 80s, this is what's going to happen these days, especially with the development of DeepSeek and ChatGPT. So I think the good start would be for the US government to look into the European partners and see what they implemented and developed. Looked at the Korean partners, because I know that there is act in South Korea that was developed, and it was also based on some of the framework of the EU AI Act, and develop a policy that is going to be based